Jimi Hendrix once said, "Knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens." God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Amen.
Well done. So, welcome to the council meeting. I'm going to start with the evacuation procedure. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lift. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Yorkshire Bank on the opposite side of the road. Please exit by the door which you have entered the room by, or by the fire exits which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signals. And if you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. Can you please make sure all your mobile phones are turned off or set to silent, please? We have 2 apologies.
I've received one apology from Councillor Margrave.
Any other apologies? Councillor Copland.
Councillor Bill Hancock.
Thank you. Okay. Filming. Tonight's meeting will be filmed for publication on the council's website. All members are reminded that they must turn their microphones on before beginning to speak. The cameras will only point to the member when the microphone is on. Can I also suggest that members fully extend the microphones so that their speeches can be properly recorded? Moving on to the minutes of the meeting on the 7th of December, apologies. Members happy for me to sign them? It's a true record. Councillor Condacourt.
Thank you much. Never actually resolved to note the things. On page 31, the depot issue, you didn't allow us to speak and didn't allow the item to be discussed, so we didn't actually note it. If we had gone to a vote, I would have called a recorded vote, so we didn't actually note it at that meeting.
The Mayor's discretion. And those is a true record? Yep. Move on to declarations of interest. Managing Director, are there any declarations of personal prejudice in the matter under consideration this evening, other than those listed on page 7 or 9 of the agenda? Any member got any other declarations of interest that haven't been recorded in the paperwork? No? I have the following announcement to make under Mayor's announcements. A civic concert is to be held at the Civic Hall on the 18th of March, starting at 6:30, and tickets are £10. This is my opportunity to raise money for my appeal, for the Veterans Contact Point and the Mental Health Drop-In. Anybody would like tickets, please go through the Civic Hall box office. Thank you very much. So, Managing Director or the leader got any announcements?
No, Madam Mayor, no announcements.
Madam Mayor, Sarah Anslew, sitting at the front, hiding a little bit, who has ably covered for Simone when she was on her maternity leave and has been a fantastic officer, is unfortunately leaving us to go and work for the PCC. Next week, I believe, she's leaving us. And I would like to, I'm sure, you pass on from all of us our thanks for a very hard work here. Say how disappointed we are she's leaving, but she's welcome back any time.
Thank you. Move on to item 7, censure of a member. Alan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a censure of Councillor Keith Kondaka. The background to this is that on the 21st of November 2016, the Standards Local Hearing Panel was established to hold a hearing into a complaint against you that you failed to comply with paragraphs 3 and 5 of the Council's Code of Conduct. You did so on the 20th of May 2015, when at the end of the full council meeting, whilst there were still many councillors, officers and members of the public in the chamber, you approached the Director of Governance and Recreation, Philip Richardson, in an agitated manner and proceeded to shout at him because you were unhappy about the advice he had given to the Mayor about allowing members to speak on a late indication. The local hearing panel found that you committed the following breaches of the Code of Conduct for councillors. You failed to comply with paragraph 3 of the Code of Conduct, which states that you must treat others with respect. The way you approached and shouted at Philip Richardson was unreasonable, excessive and disrespectful, and could have caused a detrimental view of the officer by others who, in line with council procedure, is unable to respond. You acknowledged that you were angry and frustrated at the time, and your behaviour towards Philip Richardson was inappropriate. You apologised the following day to Philip Richardson for your behaviour, and on the basis that the apology was accepted by the officer, the hearing panel concluded an informal resolution was appropriate. You also failed to comply with paragraph 5 of the Code of Conduct, in that you must not conduct yourself in a manner which could reasonably bring your office or the authority into disrepute. Members' actions and behaviour are subject to greater scrutiny than that of ordinary members of the public, and as a member you should have been aware that such unreasonable behaviour by yourself, whether it be in the presence of other members, officers and members of the public or in private, would have an adverse impact on both your reputation and the reputation of the authority in fulfilling its public role. Because the breaches were considered to be significant, the local hearing panel felt that you be publicly censured at this full council meeting. I am therefore formally censuring you for your total regard for your behaviour towards an officer in the council chamber on the 20th of May 2016 in the presence of other officers, members and members of the public, and the damage your actions may have done to both yours and the council's reputation. This censure will be minuted and kept on public record indefinitely.
Councillor Condicott, I've sought legal advice over this, and apparently you're not allowed to reply on the sanction. Councillor Condicott, please. I've sought legal advice and you have no right of reply, so can I ask you to please to be quiet? Moving on to item 8, public participation. I've had notice of 4 questions from the members of the public. Can I, before I call for the first question, make it clear that I will not tolerate calling out from the public gallery or members of the public haranguing speakers? I expect everybody in the chamber, officers, members and members of the public, to act with respect and courtesy throughout the meeting tonight. Should there be any disruption, I shall not hesitate to warn that person, and if need be, I will have to ask them to leave if they do not heed the warning. I would invite Mrs Michelle Condicott to ask her question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The capital budgets contain a significant amount for replacing vehicles. I would like to know how much has been spent on vehicle procurement for the last 2 financial years, and how much of that has been on customisation, such as installing racking, winches, etc. What delays have occurred between the purchase and the introduction into service of the vehicles due to the customisation process? What criteria are used to determine the specification required? What scrutiny has taken place to ensure that the specifications are essential and value for money? And has the Council made any consideration of the pollution impacts when selecting vehicles, particularly in the light of the diesel emissions scandals? Thank you.
Does the Leader of the Council wish to reply?
It
Councillor
went full. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Council has spent a total of £1,746,877 on vehicle procurement in 2015-16 and 2016-17 to date. Of this, £649,684 has been spent, I haven't got the pence by the way, has been spent on vehicles for general fund services, mainly refuse collection and street cleansing activities, and £1,097,192 has been spent on vehicles for housing revenue account services. Of these totals, £8,139 has been spent on racking in general fund vehicles, and £116,515 has been spent on racking, flooring, security boxes and locks in the housing revenue account vehicles. The installation of racking, etc. is not a customisation process. It is part of the overall process of the Borough Council procuring vehicles that are suitable for our activities. A process that mirrors that undertaken by companies such as British Gas, Networks, BT, Severn Trent Water, etc. Therefore, the installation of racking, security boxes, etc. forms part of the overall procurement timescales. Hence, there are no delays in the introduction of vehicles into our operational fleet from undertaking this very necessary and important part of the procurement process. As it is clear in operational matter, the specifications for the various types of vehicles we buy are developed by officers from various parts of the Council, including finance and procurement, working together. Our specifications ensure that we obtain vehicles that are fit for purpose and do not contain unnecessary features. The vehicles are then actually procured through the public sector framework to ensure value for money. Given the nature of the works they have to undertake, diesel engine vehicles are required for our operations. A key part of our specification is to buy vehicles with the most efficient engines from a miles per gallon basis and emissions perspectives that are available, so they comply fully with the law when we get them. Can I also add, Madam Mayor, that officers of this Council have won awards for procurement, and they do obtain the best value, the quality and the service specifications that we need to operate as a full Council. And they will continue to do that in the future on behalf of the taxpayers of this borough.
Mayor to ask his question, please.
Good evening. My name's Carl Mayer from the Woodlands Action Group. This is to do with the local plan it's for the portfolio holder for planning. These are my questions. Question 1. Is the Council looking to return the area taken out of HSG4 to the Greenbelt, given its newly found historical status? This could be done as a boundary extension to the existing Greenbelt. Question 2. In the last round of consultation, Warwickshire County Council's traffic assessment included work to be done on the A444 via Newtown Road. The latest one, which we are being consulted on at the moment, does not. Any such plans for the A444... Any such plans from the A444... In an email from Kelly Ford, she explained to me that even the land that's not embossed in red on the maps could be used for road access at a later date down the line. I find that this does not give residents a fair picture of what we are being consulted on at the moment. Do you think that's fair? Question 3. Can it be explained to the Action Group why the contact used by this Council at the Environment Agency in preparing this local plan was not informed about the serious flooding at Bedworth Woodlands. In fact, he was amazed when I bombarded him with photos of the damage done. He was also unaware that Woodlands Lane was closed due to flooding. Oops, sorry. Cheers. For 18 or 19 days in 2016. Why did nobody from this council tell the Environment Agency about floods at the Woodlands when preparing this new local plan? Question 4. There is no way 689 houses at the Woodlands could make enough profit to do the job sustainably, i.e. roads, sewers, culverts, especially the ones that go under the A444, especially without any SIL money. Will this council say no to allowing developers to add to 689 dwellings proposed at Bedworth Woodlands? Question 5. Can you please answer the question yes or no? Because I want all councillors here tonight to hear the answer. Will Bedworth Woodlands qualify for SIL money, which is set by this council at £50 per square metre? Yes or no? Question 6. If the answer to question 5 is no, does it mean that this site will be done by the useless 106 agreement, which we all know developers try and squirm out of? And question 7, does the portfolio holder, Councillor Danny Aldington, think that this local plan, which has taken nearly 10 years to put up for examination, will ease the borough's congestion? Will it deliver the infrastructure needed and not add pressure to local hospitals with a population increase of over 25,000 people? Thanks a lot.
Does the Cabinet Member for Planning and Development wish to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Considered at a meeting of the full Council following the consultation period and prior to submission. At the same meeting, the Council will consider the 2 Council resolutions regarding the Woodlands Greenbelt status. Modelling work has been undertaken to assess the impact of the proposals in the plan on the highway network and to identify mitigation measures needed on the network. Access points and internal road layouts will be determined at the planning application stage when more detailed site-based assessments will be undertaken. The Council is guided by the expertise of the Environment Agency on flooding matters. A strategic flood risk assessment has been undertaken and has been improved by the agency. The assessment considers the flood risk on each of the allocated sites, including the Woodlands, and has identified the flood risk implications for the development. This includes locating development away from areas of the site affected by flooding, undertaking detailed assessments for runoff, the appropriate use of green infrastructure and sustainable drainage systems, and seeking opportunities to reduce the overall level of flood risk on the site. The Council currently does not have an adopted SIL based on the content of the preliminary draft SIL. Charging schedule Woodlands would be eligible for SIL. It should be noted, however, that SIL does not replace Section 106. It is used alongside it as a means of securing infrastructure provision. The Council has worked closely with the wide range of service delivery partners to understand the impacts of the proposals contained in the plan. The policies within the plan and accompanying infrastructure delivery plan reflect the feedback received and through implementation will ensure that infrastructure is delivered to support the growth. Thank you.
To ask his question, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. While I in part welcome the Council's decision to reduce the allocation of housing being built on the Woodlands, can the portfolio holder for Planning and Development, Danny Aldington, tell me when the Labour group will adopt a Council policy of turning the Woodlands back to the Greenbelt? May I remind Councillor Aldington that this was unanimously agreed by members at the time, including the Labour Party Slough Ward member, Councillor Tony Lloyd.
Cabinet Member of Planning.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I answered it. The final draft borough plan will be considered at a meeting of the full Council following the consultation period and prior to submission. At the same meeting, the Council will consider the 2 Council resolutions regarding the Woodlands Greenbelt status.
Invite Mr Jim Foster to ask his question, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In answer to previous questions on air quality, especially related to the mothballing of the air quality management area in the St Nicholas ward, the response was given that air quality in St Nicholas area is improving. It is certainly completely technically incorrect. The facts are that DEFRA have not yet correctly addressed air quality issues raised by Client Earth legal case against UK government, which I reported to this council last November, having discussed the issue directly with Client Earth. While the nitrogen dioxide levels are very close to the global maximums in the St Nicholas and other NBBC AQMAs, with organisations such as the British Heart Foundation requesting for those levels to be halved about 2 years ago, the current concerns are not with nitrogen dioxide, which is easily measured using diffusion tubes, but with the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, which are produced by modern turbo diesel, latest generation, so-called clean engines, soon to be banned. Diesel paraffins are close to twice the size of petrol paraffins, which we all know is octane, which produces very complex molecule contaminants. The size of those PAH molecules, also linked with small soot particulates, are at least down to 100 times smaller than PM10, 10 microns, about half a thou in old money, or PM2.5s, currently mentioned in reports provided by the NBBC and only properly measurable by gas chromatography and other methods. It's not measurable. While most residents of the borough may not understand the chemistry, they will have seen the great attention given by the media to this issue under the title of the Volkswagen emissions scandal. You may have seen it last night on the One Show on the BBC. The chemicals produced by diesel engines, which lead to serious pulmonary and cardiovascular and cancer health issues, are being treated very seriously by health experts in the department of the Warwickshire Director for Public Health. Can I ask the Cabinet Member for Health and the Environment to advise if he is also communicating closely with those departments? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Longton, do you wish to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It seems a long time since you first asked this question, about 6 years ago, if I remember correctly, at the County Council. So it's been doing the rounds, and I think you're going to get the same answer. I'll do this one first. The air quality in the Leicester Road Gyratory Air Quality Management Area has improved, and this is supported by our monitoring programme and annual reports. The recently published annual status report by Bureau Veritas, the Council's independent expert consultant, states these air quality management areas sites have shown exceedances of the air quality strategy annual mean objective in previous years, but concentrations have declined since peak concentrations were recorded in 2008 and 9. Officers continue to monitor current research activity and scientific advice issued by the government. In addition, they work closely with the public health colleagues, including the Director of Public Health and specialist consultants in public health, as part of the Coventry and Warwickshire Air Quality Alliance. Officers actively participate in relevant air quality forums at a local, regional and national level. Where appropriate, briefings have been given to members on current or significant air quality issues, including one detailed briefing for members on the potential issues associated with small particulate matter PM2.5. As a consequence of the collaborative work undertaken by the Air Quality Alliance and led by public health colleagues, a bid for funding has been made to DEFRA for an air quality grant. The bid seeks funding to implement some of the recommendations of a task and finish group on transport-related air quality that has been convened in 2015 and 2016. Officers gave full support and provided evidence to the task and finish group, and should the DEFRA bid be successful, we will work closely with public health colleagues in delivering the project. Can I say that DEFRA has the answer? If DEFRA will not change the regulations, we will not change what we have to measure, then we will not be measuring it, because we can't, because we're going to the standards that are laid down, and we will follow those meticulously and all the way through. The question I think that should be asked is, if those instructions do change and this borough does start to exceed the air quality standards, then what are we going to do about it? Because it won't be this borough council who has to do things about it. It'll be the Environment Agency, County Council, highways. Where do we go? Stop cars coming in, stop diesel engine cars driving around. There's all sorts of complications that we would have to face, maybe even compulsory purchase orders to widen roads, start buying up houses and knocking buildings down, etc. Lots of complications. That's the real issue. If, in fact, DEFRA do change it and we do start to exceed those standards. But at this point in time, we are fully compliant with those standards that we're asked to do, and that's it.
Questions by members. I've had notice of 8 questions from members. I'm minded in view of the number of questions and the other items on the agenda not to allow supplementary questions this evening, and I would invite Councillor Condacourt to ask his question.
For the holder for planning. The borough plan proposed by the Cabinet for consultation includes sites for 13,374 homes over the 20-year period between 2011 and 2031. That is made up of 1,318 completions, 2,144 on sites with current planning permission, 940 on non-strategic allocations, 121 windfalls, and it has strategic sites for 8,851. The April 2016 5-year land supply document shows us that there was actually 1,486 homes that had been completed, 2,266 homes that had planning permission or allocations that could be built within the 5 years, plus 1,656 homes approved in principle but which were expected to be completed after the 5 years. That is a total of 5,408 homes that have already been banked. Missing from that are sites such as those on Eastborough Way and the Barrett site on the Wenton Road, which have already been passed by the Planning Committee. And also missing from your assessment, which totals over 1,000 homes. We also have thousands of homes which are in the planning pipeline, which may get permission before your plan could possibly be adopted. You cannot possibly ask approved developments for more money. You seem to have failed to include the expected consultation on the community infrastructure levy in the borough plan. Will you agree with me that there is zero chance of getting the much of the required £49 million for transport infrastructure funding from the very few sites that will not have been granted permission by the time you could ever get a plan adopted? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Gree. Planning applications for housing development that have been granted planning permission have been subject to a transport assessment on the back of which works have been identified and delivered through the implementation of the permission. The Council has an infrastructure delivery plan which identifies transport improvements following modelling assessments of the impacts of proposed growth. Having projects identified in the IDP will enable the Council, in partnership with others, to seek government funding for schemes alongside developer contributions.
Councillor Gutteridge to ask his question.
Up then. Could the Cabinet Member for Central Services please tell me whether we are on target to relocate to the new depot, Gresham Road, in June, and what is the cost of the new depot's renovation so far? Would you like me to repeat it again? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, well underway. The works are on track to complete by the end of June, and the amount spent on refurbishment works to date is £233,171. Monthly project meetings are taking place to ensure the project stays on track. In addition, I am personally visiting the site each month, and my next visit is planned for tomorrow. And could I thank Councillor Gutteridge for his nice short question. Thank you.
I would invite Councillor Grant to ask his question.
Thank you. With the very unwelcome news that the Bedworth branch of HSBC is due to close, can the leader of the council tell me if anybody from the Borough Council contacted HSBC to ask them to reconsider closing the branch? Surely, considering that it is a very well-used branch with high footfall and that many of the customers in Bedworth will not do online banking, this branch should not be on the list of branches closed, and the Borough Council should at least make an effort to lobby the HSBC to ask them to reconsider. The last thing we need is more empty shops in the borough.
Harvey, will you reply?
has decided to close their branch in Bedworth Town Centre as part of a raft of closures nationally. They did not notify us directly, as the property they occupy is owned by investors who have a very, very long lease on land owned by the council. As such, we are not their landlords. I have asked our new head of town centres and marketing to contact HSBC on the council and residents' behalf to see if there is a chance of them reversing this decision. And no doubt Councillor Grant could ask his friend, the MP for North Warwickshire, to do the same. In London, where no doubt this decision was taken. But I do not hold out a great deal of hope. As we have seen with the Co-op Bank this week, the last people the banks seem to consider is their customers. But I would urge those affected by this HSB closure, if it goes ahead, to consider making alternative arrangements with another town centre bank which is remaining loyal to Bedworth.
Wilson to ask his question.
Thank you, Eton and Bedworth Borough Council and Warwickshire County Council. At the recent MIPIM event, could the leader provide an update on any interest that was generated in the borough and any progress that has been made? Thank you.
The council did in London with a small delegation led by Councillor Jackson. Following this, a number of potential development partners have received escorted visits to Nuneaton Town Centre and have opened up a dialogue about how they might work with us to deliver regeneration. Our ambitions have been recognised by being included in the investment prospectus of the West Midlands Combined Authority, one of the very reasons we joined, and we have had great support from the Coventry and Warwickshire Local Enterprise Partnership. As Nuneaton is the largest town in Warwickshire, we should be counting on Warwickshire County Council members and officers to highlight the investment opportunities here when they attend the MIPIM International Conference in Cannes in March. So far, I've only heard through a press release of them promoting Leamington. I would add that the Coventry and Warwickshire LEP has also now recognised the need to include this borough directly in their deliberations by setting aside a seat for the leader of each Warwickshire district on the board, instead of the previous arrangements where only 2 seats were available, both being taken by the Tory councils in the south who excluded Nuneaton.
I would invite Councillor Gilby to ask a question, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Generated from car parking charges in the borough is down by £250,000. As the budget investigations of £50,000 have shown, £50,000 was in the last few months, which was peak shopping season. We are happy to welcome new businesses to the town centre, and this council is pursuing a deal on parking with the new tenant at the Rope Walk, which will allow their gym members to be given free parking in the Rope Walk multi-storey car park. Can the portfolio holder tell us what other innovative parking arrangements have been pursued with other businesses in our town centres in order to grow trade and draw people into the respective town centres, regardless of if the businesses have approached the council or not?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The number of parking spaces available and the cost of parking in them. Of much more importance, in my view, is the breadth and quality of the overall offer of town centres and how well councils work with businesses in these town centres. It is for this reason that we've invested in the creation of a new high-level post of Head of Town Centres and Marketing. I'm pleased to say that we've appointed a high-quality and experienced individual to this post, Jonathan White, who actually started with us on the 30th of January. A very important part of Jonathan's job is to talk and work with town centre businesses on an ongoing basis to see how we can jointly increase footfall in our town centres. This may include doing different things in the future with our parking offer. However, with Jonathan only having been here for 2.5 weeks, it's too early for any joint ideas to have yet been developed. However, I can tell Councillor Galby that we have already offered free parking over the Christmas period across both towns, offered free parking for the Christmas light switch on across both towns, reduced season tickets in Harefield Road so that it can now cost less than £1 to park there all day, cut charges completely in 2 of our town centre car parks, extended opening times of Harefield Road car park until 9 p.m, and scrap charges in all car parks after 6 p.m. I do have one slight amendment to what Councillor Galby has said, and we're not entering into any agreement with a private sector business. It's actually with Rope Walk themselves.
I'd invite Councillor Brindley to ask a question.
Thank you. Climbing wall. It was stated that despite it costing approximately £100,000 per year, it would create revenue and income. Could the portfolio holder please tell me how much has been generated since it has been operational?
Thank you, Madam. Climbing Tower has generated just under £2,000 income to date since being operational. The delivery model of this new activity has required some operational changes since the commencement in April of last year. There has also been in-year efficiency savings of approximately £20,000, which has also contributed towards the delivery budget. This myth of £100,000 cost for the climbing wall is just what it is, a myth. The wall actually cost £40,000. The salary cost was there anyway. The Play Rangers staff, all we've done is stop calling them Play Rangers and realign the service with the sports development, department, and gave them a climbing wall. So we have recycled the vehicles we use, we've realigned the service, and provided people with a new opportunity and a new experience of a new Olympic sport. The new activities received some very positive feedback from the town centres and also in the communities during the delivery programme last year. The coming year has already received several dates for events, internal and external bookings, with the first event being delivered at the E-Town Centre Fun Day on the 26th of February in partnership with Everyone Active and the sports clubs locally. This community event will provide opportunities for local residents to take part in this sport, increasing the physical activity levels. The only people that have continuously said negative things about the climbing wall are the opposition politicians who continuously twist the true cost of £40,000 that we paid for the wall. No wonder they're sitting in opposition, Madam Mayor.
To ask his question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. After all the fanfare in the local press some months ago about the supposedly imminent sale of the council house, can the leader explain why it has all gone so very quiet? Is this the controlling group having messed up another project?
Councillor Harper.
Madam, continuously, since we moved staff into this building to save on costs. A number of offers have been received and considered in detail, but the Council is under an obligation, indeed a legal obligation, to secure the best possible value for money in this sale. We shall only sell the building when we are confident we have secured the right offer for the taxpayers of the borough and not before. And in doing so, Madam Mayor, we shall rely, of course, upon the advice of financial officers who are well qualified to give such advice.
I invite Councillor Gazan to ask his question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Galley Common, in addition to the strategic housing sites identified as part of the borough plan process, what provisions for improving infrastructure are being put in place?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Each of the policy which lists the infrastructure requirements that would be needed to support the site coming forward. An infrastructure delivery plan also details specific schemes which will be brought forward during the life of the plan, the content of which has been informed by work with service delivery partners. The document will be kept under review to take advantage of funding opportunities that come forward during the life of the plan.
Move on to item 10, special agency decisions. I'm informed there is no decisions taken under the special agency rule. Moving on to item 11, Cabinet. Report by the Leader of the Council is attached, and I invite the Leader of the Council, Councillor Dennis Harvey, to present his report.
Before you, I think it's probably self-explanatory. Of course, in recent months, there's been a lot of discussion, in fact, over the last 12 months regarding budgetary matters, always on the advice of well-qualified officers, which was, when I mentioned it earlier, a fact that was seemingly doubted by one of the councillors here when I mentioned it in Cabinet this afternoon. But I have, in fact, for anybody who wishes to see it, a full list of our financial officers and their qualifications, Madam Mayor, and I sincerely doubt that anybody else in here, including myself, has got anywhere near these sort of financial qualifications to be doubting our officers in whom we place so much trust.
To ask Councillor Harvey or any other Cabinet member any questions arising from the report. Any member? Councillor Condico.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got several questions. I'll start with the Borough Plan consultation, which you mentioned at the bottom of page 50. It has recently come to light that the air quality report, which is part of the evidence base, has been doctored for this consultation to change its meaning quite significantly. We also have the issues of documents being released really late and some documents that I've asked for not being released to me. We have consultation events. These drop-in events have now finished. The last one was tonight at the same time as this meeting. Will the portfolio holder actually do something to help people take part in the consultation by ensuring more documents are released, the original versions, not the ones that have been modified by officers here, and actually hold more drop-in events? Because we've got 3.5 weeks of consultation and no drop-in events now. This is appalling. This is not a consultation. It's a sham exercise if the drop-in events are too early and documents aren't released, because people need time to read the documents and then come to see the officers. And finally, as part of the consultation, will he ensure that the officers give a full briefing to all councillors on how the numbers add up?
Can I ask for a little bit more respect from the top, please?
Councillor Harvey. Madam Mayor, but I think counting such words which could be liable to legal action, such as doctored.
Thank you. There's about 10 questions in there, I think. Drop-in events, quite right, finished tonight. The consultation doesn't end until the 13th of March. All documentation is available online. All documentation is available in this council chamber, in this council town hall. All documentation is available in the 2 remaining libraries that we do have after all of the closures. So they are readily available to the public. As he well knows, drop-in events do cost money, and so no, I'll flatly say no, there will be no further...
People are speaking and it's hard. I'm sorry, we don't allow any more public speaking from the galleries once we've had public participation, so I'm sorry. Could just ask if we can be civil.
What Councillor Harvey has said, doctored is a very, very strong word indeed. Thank you.
Councillor Tremans.
I did have 2 questions. Firstly, for the portfolio holder for leisure, and then also one on the consultation for a plan. I don't think I'll ask the formal one. I'm not sure I'll get a factual answer. I've just looked at the budget book for 2017, and the budget for the climbing wall is £99,610, not £40,000. So I think, I'll ask a question that doesn't rely on somebody having to give me a numbers answer. So on the planning consultation, why on earth are we holding the consultation for the area of Nuneaton that is receiving the largest number of homes, St Nicholas and Weddington, and the wider Crowhill area? There is only one consultation event being held, and that's being held on exactly the same night as this council meeting. so that councillors cannot go and speak to their residents, cannot spend the time with them that they need. Residents can't come here and see what's happening here either and talk about the rural plan here and in the extraordinary meeting later. It's not fair. It looks like, we've heard sham and all the rest of it mentioned tonight and many times before about the consultation. Why is it so hard to agree to the request that I and others have made to have consultations in Weddington and St Nicholas and Horston Grange / Crow Hill? That would have been the fair thing to have done, and to have done them on nights when it didn't clash with other council business. So please, can we? I know there is a cost to it, but this is a multi-million-pound decision that we are making for the future of the entire borough. I think it's not unreasonable to have at least one more drop-in session, and ideally in Weddington or St Nicholas. Thank you.
Councillor Aldington.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, on the question about where available, we don't set when venues are available. That is down to the people that actually own and run the buildings. Yeah, he did raise it. He raised it up.
The final time, I'm really getting upset at the fact that the gallery can't be quiet. We do ask for respect when councillors are talking, so this will have to be my final one, and then if there's any more noise, I'm going to have to clear the gallery. I'm sorry, but... Councillor Aldington.
Yeah, he report was agreed. Didn't even mention it at Cabinet either. So everyone...
Could I ask, it's your decision that you don't clear the gallery, because the vast majority of our residents sitting in the gallery have been well-mannered, spoke when the appropriate time was to speak, and people here can put in questions or can speak at the beginning of our meetings, and have listened politely to other people. It is only a very small section of people sitting in the gallery who are shouting.
So, this really is the last warning, so please.
Side that called an extraordinary meeting for this evening. It was that side that called an extraordinary council meeting for this evening. So we may have been away at a time where they could have spoken to their residents.
Councillor Wilson.
Point of order, please, Madam Mayor, point of order. Decided by you. You decided to have the...
Clemens, it's not a point of order, because it's...
It is. The councillor has said that we made the decision. We did not. You made the decision to hold the meeting on the same...
By the legal officer, it's not a point of order, so can I ask you to sit down? Councillor Wilson.
I doubt I'll get a straight answer, because the portfolio holder seems to be misleading, because he knows full well that this council was booked in 12 months ago to do that. Therefore, it should have been perfectly possible and eminently sensible, in fact, to have it on a different night. But given the fact that we are going to be considering budget recommendations tonight, which will have a £28,000 surplus, according to the budget recommendations which have been moved by the Leader of the Council, surely a little bit of that surplus could be used to afford the residents of this council a decent opportunity to be consulted. The portfolio holder said that he sent out an email asking councillors whether they could hold events. I asked the officer, lo and behold, she's lost the email. She can't find it. It was never sent. So that wasn't done. And for the first time, I will agree with Councillors Tandy and Margrave, please note it in your diaries because it won't happen again, that they want a consultation in the Attleborough and Whitestone area. Will the Leader use some of the surplus that he is generating tonight to give residents a fair democratic chance to make full, open and reasonable consultation responses to this council? Yes or no?
Budget yet through Cabinet, but it hasn't been passed here. And this council has to be able to make every penny it can towards the £1.4 million shortfall we are facing due to the Conservative government for next year. 28,000 goes nothing towards that. And when we do get there next year, Madam Mayor, I hope the councillor remembers that.
Councillor Longden, wrong way.
I've just got to rewind slightly. It's because of the spurious allegations made on the air quality management issue that an independent report is now underway to look at those factors that were brought in. This is not the House of Commons parliamentary privilege does not extend into this chamber. There have been MPs in the past who have challenged other MPs to make the same allegations outside the chamber. So the warning that came from the leader and from Councillor Aldington is well made. And I hope we will, when this report comes out, we will see. I'm 110% confident in our officers. We will see where the truth lies. And I hope some further action can then be taken when we see the facts and not the fiction that's being portrayed.
The report of the Leader of the Council, so we don't stray off. Councillor Gilby.
I'd like to ask a question about consultations in my area, seeing as though the consultation in my area was actually done before we could properly advertise any consultations. There was nothing in the press because it was on the Monday and the newspaper didn't come out until the Wednesday. The only reason people turned up was because a resident who was so aggrieved by the lack of publication of the details was that he printed his own leaflet, flyer off and pushed it through doors. I'd like to ask, again, on behalf of my residents, can you justify why we can't have another consultation? And I've already offered space in a local community centre for free that we can use. So it's not the space or the availability of space that's the issue. I understand the staffing costs, but this is a once in a generation chance for people to see these things in front of them and get as much information as they can to try and make an informed decision. And it seems like this council is just negating any sort of responsibility for that because it's just blaming everybody else. There's no time, there's no money, there's no this, there's no that. We've paid enough out on consultants to review this over the last God knows how many years. Surely a few extra quid in the pot for the residents and not for some consultancy from somewhere else wouldn't go amiss.
Aldington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's actually the third consultation since 2000. Councillor Gorby's already had an answer to her request previously.
Watch this video and to
Point
me.
of explanation. Can you sit down, please? Can I remind members it's questions? We seem to be diverting into statements and personal explanations. So I've got Councillor Condacour and Councillor Wilson and Councillor Guttridge. You're now. Councillor Guttridge.
Thank you, Council. In May 2016, I haven't received the email reference to consultation finding a site for my residents. I think the consultation should be done later in the afternoon and evening when people are home from work, not in the morning. Thank you.
It's meant to be questions on the things in front of us that are being discussed at Cabinet.
I've actually made that point, Councillor. I'm hoping it's gone through. Councillor Condacour.
Maintenance contract extension, which is on the middle of page 50. We have a grounds maintenance contract in three parts that have gradually been merged together. So we've got contracts 1 and 2 and contracts 3. The Cabinet met in private about the extension of the grounds maintenance contract. Obviously, I can't say much about the private details, but the extension will mean we'll have one grounds maintenance contract rolled over for a period. Unfortunately, for the last 10 years, we've had a worse service for pruning back in the east of Nuneaton than the other contracts. So will you ensure we actually catch up and do some of the pruning that's been underdone on the east side of Nuneaton compared to other areas in this extension?
The answer to that really is funding. We don't get the funding now from government. You've heard it and heard it and heard it again. You've seen it on the news every single night. Not just this council, all councils around the country having grave difficulties. So we've got what we got. We have to operate within the funding we've given from government. You've heard once tonight, Councillor Condacour, correct me if I'm wrong, because the figure's gone up, Councillor Harvey, but I think it's 68% of our budget we've been cut. 60%, so he has corrected me, 60% of the budget. So how you think we're going to carry on giving the service that we used to give years ago when we had the budget to do it? I really don't know. That is why we've actually put the grounds maintenance contracts together, to give us a £34,000 saving in this budget that you see in front of you tonight, which I'm sure, if you've got a budget of your own, you've benefited from that £34,000 and that good work that this Labour group's done with the officers to get these contracts together. It's about saving money and delivering the best service we can. We can only deliver the best service if we've got the money to do it. We haven't.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also agree that we should be having more drop-in events, particularly in affected wards. My own ward, which is badly affected by the borough plan, hasn't had one, and they should be at times that are convening this borough. It is a question, and I'm getting to the question. It is.
Please?
It is. And I was on Charles Eaton Road a few weeks ago, the day of the drop-in event at the Anderton Road School, and the residents there had only received leaflets that morning from the Borough Council to tell them about the drop-in event later that evening. So my question is, why weren't these letters sent out a lot sooner? Because the Borough Council clearly had a lot more notice on when the Borough Plan consultation would be held than we as residents did. Surely they could have been sent out sooner so that people in Clare's ward, where they didn't receive this letter until after the consultation, they should have been sent out sooner.
Councillor Aldington? I
Yeah,
think there was a question in there.
Yeah, I think there was a question in there. Madam Mayor, I haven't got the answer to that. I'm quite happy with that particular issue.
Thank you. In his previous answer, that in relation to consultation events, that it was mentioned at Cabinet and that we would have an opportunity at that point to comment on the consultation events. Exhibit A, Madam Mayor, we all remember this because it's so damn hard to keep carrying everywhere. This is the document which went to Cabinet. 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages mentioned about consultation. Nowhere on there does it mention the dates, times and venues of those consultation documents. Will the portfolio holder now apologise for misleading this council and look at putting on more consultation events which should have been enabled to be viewed beforehand? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Asking the councillor opposite, in fact, the entire Conservative opposition, would they like to apologise to the residents of this borough, and particularly the people who support them, for refusing point blank to take up the 2 seats awarded to them on the Borough Plan Working Party?
However, if he wants a reply, I'm more than willing to give him one.
Sit down. Now, excuse, councillor, please. Are you going to issue an apology for the swearing? Now, you should be stood up for a start, but I'll forgive that at this present moment in time. But I am getting a little concerned about the disrespect in this chamber. Now, please, that's Councillor Tremors, please don't be pointing across the chamber. I really don't like this.
I will rise, and I will apologise for using uncouncil-like language, but in the same token, will the Mayor please admonish the members for talking when they haven't been called to talk either, which generated the comment? If we're going to have admonition, it should be fair and square, Madam Mayor.
I would like to think as Mayor I am even-handed in this chamber. Councillor Harvey.
I would like to apologise on behalf of anybody who's been talking on this side. I personally haven't heard them, and it could have been me just answering something here. I do apologise for that, but I do think swear words, and this is not the first swear word we've heard this evening, have no place in this chamber, and in all my time on this council I've never heard anything like it. It is unacceptable.
Thank you. Page 50, consultation on the borough plan submission. And the quote is, "Consultation is absolutely vital to the emerging borough plan, and this decision will enable stakeholders to provide feedback on emerging policy." On the radio, the portfolio holder said he would like everyone to get involved. I'm just asking the question, does the portfolio holder stand by those two statements? And if he does, can he explain to my residents, so they can watch on this video, why they can't have another consultation in their area, despite me laying it, giving you a room, everything? Can you just explain that to them? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I share that with residents. She's quite able to share that with residents. Yes, I do stand by those two statements, and they will have the ability to take part in the consultation up until the 13th of March. So that's another almost 4 weeks.
Councillor Condico, I'm going to have one more speaker and then I'm going to move on, because we have got a rather large agenda tonight. Councillor Condico.
This wonderful borough plan we've got was being developed during the summer of this year, and looking at the borough plan working group, which is mentioned on page 51, the meeting on the 30th of November selected people to go on that working party. Looking at the travel assessment, it seemed the sites had been selected before July. Why was it that the working party was only reconstituted probably 6 to 8 months after all the sites were selected and it was actually a done job? Thank you. Very nice, Mayor.
I think Councillor Condico is getting a bit confused. As the Borough Plan Working Party is there for members to give their views. They're not there to make decisions. And I've made that quite clear in everything that I've said in Cabinet, in full council previously. The decisions are there for the Cabinet and this full council to make.
To agenda item 12, election of the Mayor and Deputy Mayor. As members know, the Council this time seeks to nominate candidates for the office of Mayor and Deputy Mayor, so the arrangements can be made in good time for the next municipal year. Can I invite nominations for the office of Mayor for the municipal year 2017-18?
Wilson.
Thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Wilson, please show. Okay. So that's Councillor Hancock. Congratulations. Mayor. I move on now for nominations for the Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to move Councillor Watkins, Madam Mayor.
And I second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any other nominations? Councillor Wilson.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Gutteridge, Madam Mayor.
Seconded.
Thank you. So again, I move to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Watkins, please show. Thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Gutteridge, please show. Thank you. Any abstentions? No. Councillor Watkins, congratulations. So, to item 13, recommendations from Cabinet or other committees. As these items are matters requiring decisions by the Council, they are open to debate, subject to the usual rules set out in Rule 13 of the Council Procedure Rules. I've lost a page somewhere. That's one. So, Councillor Harvey, can I invite you to move the approval of the meetings for the Council and its committees?
Could I move the years, Madam Mayor, to help people make plans and so on? Could I say, though, that there were some comments about planning committees, and I've had a couple since, and we could, of course, that could be looked at separately, so that we do make some alteration to that. That's available in any case during the year, but this sets out largely the generality of meetings, and we can in fact make some alterations. In fact, one alteration we shall have to make later due to one of my cabinet recommendations about amalgamating two committees.
Second, Madam Mayor, and reserve my right.
So moving items 1 and 2 under A. Any councillor wish to speak?
Cabinet as well about the spacing of planning meetings, particularly over the Christmas break, and 2 planning meetings 2 weeks apart. I was brought up that I could actually have commented earlier. Well, I couldn't comment before the paperwork was printed for these meetings, and I did raise the matter with the monitoring officer, Philip Richardson, about the spacing of meetings, particularly planning meetings where we do have quiet periods over Christmas and bank holidays. I do think actually members of the opposition groups should be consulted before this paperwork was produced so that we could make some friendly amendments. I also welcome the idea of merging standards and audit committee, and that's something else that should have actually been brought forward earlier so that it could have actually been put into this timetable, rather than have a timetable, then a motion to change 2 committees and then have to do the timetable again. It really would work a lot better if we actually behaved more grown up and actually shared information early so we can actually have a constructive adult debate about timetables and meetings. It's not that political.
No. Julie is the second. Did you wish to speak? No. So I'm moving to the vote. No. Councillor Harvey, do you wish to respond?
Just to say, Madam Mayor, open to that, but I didn't get this beforehand, before other parties. It was in the paperwork along with everybody else. So there's no secrecy here. It's about when we have meetings, nothing else.
I'll be moving to the vote, and it'll be a show of hands. So all those in favour of the timetable as set out? Thank you. Against? Any abstentions? No, it's carried. To move on to item B, Housing Revenue Account Budget 1718, Associated Capital Programme 1718. Councillor Jackson, can I invite you to move the recommendations from Cabinet on the Council's Housing Revenue Account and Associated Capital Programme?
Thank you. Recommending a balanced budget and capital programme to Council tonight. This is in spite of constant changes in government policy, proposals from government where details as yet are still to be given, and with the impact of the government changes in welfare benefits. We are, though, seeing a large capital programme of nearly £9 million, which provides the needed investment in our stock. I also do want to place on record my thanks to the Director of Housing and Communities and her staff for the professional advice given, and indeed to the finance officers who also we value their professional advice. Thank you, Madam.
Wish to speak on the item? Councillor Wilson.
The Housing Revenue Account budget, and Kelly will be circulating that as I speak. 2 years. 2 very small words, but an eternity in politics. 2 years this council has had to come up with a plan to support the sheltered housing schemes within our borough, a service which many people rely on for their safety and security. And what did Labour do during those 2 years? Did they convene a working party to put forward proposals for the future? Did they work up alternative models for the housing revenue account to try and deal with this earlier? Did they speak to residents about the challenges facing the HRA in the future? No. They buried their head in the sand until the last possible minute, until they were forced into action. Let us be clear from the outset. Change was going to happen no matter what this council did. Services will change. They must change. But the mark of a good council is what do you do when faced with difficulties and how you do it. By any measure, this council has failed when it comes to the residents of sheltered housing. Labour failed to act sooner. Labour failed to put a range of options together. and Labour failed to give residents a meaningful consultation as to how their services were going to change. When Labour went out to consultation, they put forward the most savage option possible that would remove the vast majority of services to residents, and they turned the politics of fear into an art form. Instead of being grown-up politicians, they resorted to scaring residents, some of whom are the most vulnerable in our borough, into submission. At Cabinet in November 2016, on pink papers that no one but councillors are allowed to see, 3 options were put forward. Option 1 was the status quo and was clearly unaffordable. Option 3, which went out to consultation, only allowed for all but the most basic provision of services. But there was an option 2. Option 2 was not debated at Cabinet, just glossed over, and it became apparent that no real work had been done by Labour to see if option 2 was even viable. Why didn't Labour try to see whether the next best option was possible? In my book, that is a dereliction of duty. So, my colleagues and I began work with officers to see if option 2 could be a viable alternative that residents could benefit from, if some thought, imagination, and good old-fashioned hard work were applied to the subject. I am pleased to report not only to Council, but to the very residents who were subjected to the worst kind of politics of fear, that it is possible, and that is the alternative budget resolution for the housing revenue account that we will be moving tonight. I will give credit where it is due. Labour have altered their original position compared to the savage cuts they initially wanted to inflict on the sheltered housing scheme. But this has only been through the vehement opposition of residents and the concerted hard work of the Conservative opposition that circumstances have changed. And I note that Labour, in their alleged compromise budget at County Council, didn't even bother to try and put the money back in, so Labour standing up for hard-working residents doesn't really stack up. We called a special meeting in January to discuss the sheltered housing scheme and called on Labour to work towards making option 2 a reality. They would have had our wholehearted support in doing what is right by the residents of this borough. But our pleas, and those of those living in sheltered housing, have fallen on deaf ears. At the meeting, we said go away and think the unthinkable. When meeting with the officers, we told them that everything is up for discussion and any idea can be brought to the table in order to make option 2 work. We did, and we have produced a housing budget that can sustain a better level of service to the majority of residents than was on offer at the original consultation or the revised proposals. Let us be clear what option 2 will do. 5 schemes will still be decommissioned, but these are the ones that, in the officer's professional opinion, are no longer suited for continued use as sheltered housing. Very sheltered will be recategorised as sheltered, but 24 out of 33 schemes will survive in their revised form. That means 75% of schemes will save their access to the wardens, which is a greater proportion than under Labour's proposal. Residents living in those 24 schemes will have access to 37 hours worth of support a week, compared to the 18 hours per week they would get under the revised independent living programme. That is double the service than they would get under Labour. By any standard, these proposals are surely better than the offer currently on the table from the Labour group. We can offer more people, more of a service than the current plans provide for. Surely it is a no-brainer. If we can deliver a better service than that which is currently on the table, surely we as councillors are under an obligation to vote for such a package. This budget proposal shows that not only are the Conservative opposition prepared to talk the talk, but we are prepared to walk the walk. We have worked hard to put the interests of some of the most vulnerable in our society first, and I would urge all councillors here tonight to vote for this alternative budget resolution. I move the resolution, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor.
We'll be speaking on the amendments.
Short words on this. What a goal. I certainly shan't be voting for it. The Conservative-led County Council withdrew 100% of the money that was for sheltered living. They blame, of course, their masters and mistresses in Downing Street. In fact, the leader of the County Council, Councillor Seckham, is regularly featured on the LGA Daily Bulletin because she's apparently the social services spokesperson at the LGA, criticising the government. It's not our government, it's your government, criticising the government for not putting in enough funds towards supporting people. Then your colleagues at Shire Hall, you're not independents, you're all part of the same party, have then cut all the money, all of it, to this borough. And then you say, we, who have built up proudly some of the best sheltered housing in this country over the 40-odd years' existence of this council, and even before when there were two councils, we are the ones who have let down the elderly people. You have a goal, quite simply a goal, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Tandy.
For the nasty voice. I've never heard such mealy-mouthed comments from any Conservative member than I've just heard in this chamber. And all that they are doing, quite frankly, is trying to cover up their own Conservative colleagues at Warwickshire County Council who cut this funding in the first place. I actually take offence at the comment that Councillor Wilson made when he talks about the alleged joint budget. The alleged joint budget took out £2.4 million of the Conservative cuts out of their proposed budget this year. Never mind the money they wanted to put back into the budget next year. I haven't made a lot of noise about the fact, but I'll tell you now what I've been doing. Just last week, I went to see the Director of Adult Services, and Councillor Jackson is aware that I went to speak to him, to ask him to make sure that some of the £2.4 million that Labour saved in the Tory budget this year goes back into supporting our sheltered housing. This is mealy-mouthed, trying to cover up for their own Conservative colleagues at Warwickshire County Council.
I've got Councillor Tromans as the second. I've had nobody else. So I've had nobody else indicate except Councillor Tromans. Ooh, too late. And she gets a £500, yeah. So Councillor Tromans as the seconder gets to speak, and then it'll be Councillor Jackson with the right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, you can say what you like. You can say Tory, Conservative, you can play politics, you can try and blame the government. It's not your government, it's somebody else's, but it's... Your microphone's still on, Madam Mayor. Try and blame the government, which apparently isn't your government. It might be the United Kingdom government, but apparently you're not in it. You're in some other world. Wow! Why isn't that a surprise to us? Everything that we hear tells us that you're not living in the real world. You had an opportunity to minimise the impact on residents. Whether you're the Labour Party, Conservative, whatever party you are, you had an opportunity to minimise the impact on residents. You didn't want to do it. Your initial knee-jerk reaction was to hurt the most vulnerable people to make a petty political point. We have found a better way. Option 2 that was produced by officers that you said couldn't be funded, we have a properly funded and costed budget here, signed off, that says it can be done. And it saves 75% of the services. Some of it wasn't appropriate to remain as sheltered housing anyway. And, if we want to mention the fact that we are all one party together and can't be disassociated, on Warwickshire County Council, this supposed joint budget was voted for by Councillor Tandy and other twin hatters here. And do you know what difference they made? Apparently less than 2% of the budget. So it was effectively the budget as it stood. Now, the reason that option 2 is affordable, the reason that the option that you were looking for put forward was affordable is, as was shown in the pink papers, and I won't go into all of the details, but in other papers it was referred to as well, the amount that this council was thinking that they would be losing to the government didn't happen. The government let them hang on to well over an extra £1 million. So, that heartless Conservative government that's taken money away through the county, has ended up giving you a huge sum back. That's why we can do things like option 2. You should be saying a good idea doesn't care who had it. If this protects residents, if this protects vulnerable elderly people, only petty politics would stop you from supporting it. If you want to call it your idea all along because it was in the officers' pink papers, fine. I'm only concerned about the residents. Why aren't you? Support this, save, it's fine to scoff, but prove it. Do the right thing, support the residents, save 75% of the service. It's all here in black and white, signed off by the officers.
Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 12 months of supporting people funding, £781,000 was cut by Warwickshire County Council to this council. Fact, it is a Conservative government that we have. And the 1.2 million, Councillor Tromans, I only wish the government had given us 1.2 millions. Of course it hasn't. All it has done is delayed getting £1.2 million, we estimate, from this council, in addition to other monies that seem to be eking away. Far from saving services, I note in bullet point 2, you actually don't agree with what Labour did, which was you're going to totally declassify Poplar House, a scheme in Bedworth. The Labour proposals, which this council has agreed, actually took that out, acknowledging that it didn't have the physical attributes of other decommissioned schemes. So that's 100% cut to provision that Conservatives are proposing in regard to the agreed stance of this council. And bullet point 3, the sense of that evades me. So what you are doing, people are not in receipt of housing benefit because they are incredibly wealthy. Supporting people funding wasn't put in place for people who were incredibly wealthy. And your proposal is for these people who need to be in receipt of benefit is to charge them either 75% of the total cost or for those in receipt of partial benefit, 50%. Frankly, that is really going to hurt the most vulnerable people in our communities. It doesn't make sense. To me, it is financially ridiculous. And the idea of then on top of that hit on the most vulnerable people in our communities who are struggling, those that would be in receipt of benefit, you're going to increase all fees and charges by 5%. So you're going to charge them 75% or 50% extra and increase all current fees and charges by 5%. The Labour proposal is to increase them by 3%, considerably less. And then at section B, I'd remind members opposite that we have around about 3,000 people in need of having their own council accommodation. And you, quite clearly, are going to cease all new build for the whole life of the HRA business plan. Sense? Sorry, that is senseless. I can't vote for this. It makes no sense and it hurts the most vulnerable people in our community.
I am going to move to the vote, and by law, can I just finish? Can you just sit down a minute, save your legs? I am going to move to the vote, and by law, we're required a recorded vote, so we'll be doing that, Alan.
If I move to the recorded vote then for the amendment. So, Madam Mayor, I will read out the name of each member in alphabetical order, who will then indicate if they are for or against this amendment. I will act a little bit like an echo for the formal record, so I will repeat the member's name and their indication after each member has spoke. So, Councillor Aldington. Against. So that's Councillor Aldington against. Councillor Beaumont. Against. Councillor Beaumont against. Councillor Bennett. Against. Councillor Bennett against. Councillor Bonner. Councillor Bonner abstained. Councillor Brindley. For. Councillor Brindley for. Councillor Copland. Against. Councillor Copland against. Councillor Daffin. Against. Councillor Daffin against. Councillor Doherty apologies. Councillor Doughty has left. Councillor Elliott. Against. Councillor Elliott against. Councillor Gazane. For. Councillor Gazane for. Councillor Glass. Against. Councillor Glass against. Councillor Golby. Councillor Golby for. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gran for. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Gutteridge for. Councillor Hancocks. Councillor Hancocks against. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey against. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Haynes against. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson against. Councillor Kondaka. Councillor Kondaka abstain. Councillor Tony Lloyd. Councillor Tony Lloyd against. Councillor Ian Lloyd. Against. Councillor Ian Lloyd against. Councillor Longdon. Against. Councillor Longdon against. Councillor Margrave apologies. Councillor Caroline Phillips. Against. Councillor Caroline Phillips against. Councillor Neil Phillips. Against. Councillor Neil Phillips against. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret. Against. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret against. Councillor Margaret Pomfret. Against. Councillor Margaret Pomfret against. Councillor Jill Shepherd. Councillor Jill Shepherd against. Councillor Tracy Shepherd. Councillor Tracy Shepherd against. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tandy against. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Tromans for. Councillor Watkins. Councillor Watkins against. And Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson for. The amendment is lost.
So the amendment is lost, so we move to the substantive motion. Any member wishes to speak? Kondaka.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's very interesting to be here with the housing revenue account. We hardly ever talk about it, and it's been going on for 2 years, the various processes of change. We are going to spend, according to these accounts, £500,000 on making people redundant, and I understand that they're being made redundant maybe today, around the time of this meeting. So it is really important to know if it's a done deal or not a done deal. I have a lot of sympathy for the Tories' efforts to go for option 2. I don't like option 1. There is obviously things in the Tories' way of doing option 2 I don't like. Never building any new council houses is going to be difficult. And it would be really nice, particularly after we've had the county council and the county council Labour and Tory councillors actually putting plans ahead months before the budget, actually having meetings for weeks and coming to a compromise, why we don't actually do that for things like this problem with the housing account. Because there is no councillor, and lots of councillors have got a will to try and keep as many people employed as possible. And I'm sure there could have been a 1.85 option or something in the middle somewhere that would have meant less people were made redundant. There would be actually a better transition from the current arrangement to your, we'll call it option 1.3 at the moment with the 28 jobs retained. So we do need to cooperate better, and the way we do politics in this chamber is not good because we are making people redundant. We're taking decisions on a very confrontational method when actually there are a range of options, shades of grey. Yeah. You okay? Do you need a glass of water? There are shades of grey between the various options, and we desperately need to make sure all the older people in the complex are safe and that we do actually decommission a few of the ones to actually make the whole service sustainable. So I really, really get angry when we have this confrontational, when actually I say there's a lot of good in option 2, And if we'd have actually had a system where we went through all the options as a working party, we may have got to something everyone could agree with. Also on the housing revenue account, I'm passionate that we actually get good value out of our capital spending. You're going to spend £9 million of capital money. If that money is not well spent, that is £9 million of debt that is weighing on all our budgets. And that has to be funded before you pay for awarding the sheltered housing. Yeah, this is a lot of money, £9 million. I know we need to spend a lot of money, but actually having a working party and actually going through the capital budget to see whether anything's being gold-plated, I think would come up with a few £100,000. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Harvey.
Am I allowed to speak on this?
You are? You did second it, so you have the right to respond.
Madam Mayor, I think there's been a lot of work.
Point of order, he didn't reserve his right to speak, Madam Mayor.
In that case, Councillor Jackson. I want that shape.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very pleased that we had a massive consultation with regard to this, and indeed residents, tenants, were able to have a one-to-one consultation meeting with a senior housing officer, and many of them took up that opportunity. Councillor has drawn attention to the fact that we need to get value for money from our £9 million capital programme. Indeed, we have excellence in procurement in this authority. Even tonight at the Cabinet meeting that took place before Council, we looked at a service level agreement in regard to one of the housing programmes, which is again saving this money, saving this council money. Madam Mayor, I think this is as good a budget as we could possibly come up with, bearing in mind the savage attacks, I can use that word, because I think £781,000 cut in the last year by Warwickshire County Council, and the savage attack on housing revenue accounts by this government do leave us in a very difficult position. But we are going to invest in our stock. We're going to make sure that our homes are improved. We're going to introduce fair charges. We are going to have to introduce a 3% increase in fees and charges, a 1% decrease in rent in accordance with government policy. So, Madam Mayor, I am pleased that in the current, very challenging financial times, this provides the best for the tenants of Nuneaton and Bedworth.
I shall move to the vote, and by law we're required to have a recorded vote. Alan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will again read out the names of each member in alphabetical order, who will then indicate if they are for or against this substantive motion. And please excuse the echo again in relation to the formal proceedings. Councillor Aldington. Councillor Aldington, 4. Councillor Beaumont. Councillor Beaumont, 4. Councillor Bennett. Councillor Bennett, 4. Councillor Bonner. Councillor Bonner, abstain. Councillor Brindley. Councillor Brindley, against. Councillor Copland. Councillor Copland, 4. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Daffin, 4. Councillor Doherty, apologies. Councillor Doughty, left. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Elliott, 4. Councillor Gazane. Councillor Gazane, against. Councillor Glass. Councillor Glass, 4. Councillor Golby. Councillor Golby, against. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gran, against. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Gutteridge, against. Councillor Hancox. Councillor Hancox, 4. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey, 4. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Haynes, 4. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson, 4. Councillor Kondaka. Councillor Kondaka, abstain. Councillor Tony Lloyd. Councillor Tony Lloyd, 4. Councillor Ian Lloyd. Councillor Ian Lloyd, 4. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Longdon, 4. Councillor Margrave, apologies. Councillor Caroline Phillips. Councillor Caroline Phillips, 4. Councillor Neil Phillips. Councillor Neil Phillips, 4. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret, 4. Councillor Margaret Pomfret. Councillor Margaret Pomfret, 4. Councillor Jill Shepherd. Councillor Jill Shepherd, 4. Councillor Tracy Shepherd. Councillor Tracy Shepherd, 4. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tandy 4. Councillor Tromans. Against. Councillor Tromans against. Councillor Watkins. 4. Councillor Watkins 4. Councillor Wilson. Against. Councillor Wilson against. The substantive motion is carried.
The substantive motion is carried. So I move on to item C. Councillor Harvey can invite you to move the recommendations from Cabinet on the Council's budget for 2017-18, including the addendum. Councillor Harvey.
In recent months, members of Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council, along with our residents, will have read of the increasing problems being encountered by local authorities up and down the country in trying to maintain essential services, while struggling to balance their budgets in the face of increasing cuts in government grant. This authority is no exception. Indeed, ever since the Conservatives came to power in 2010, our grant has been relentlessly slashed year after year, with the cut now standing at a staggering 60% by 2017-18. What's more, we have now been told that grant will no longer be available to help fund local services, many of which are legally obligatory, within the next couple of years. As we only receive around 8.5% of gross business rates payable and less than 13% of total council tax, our financial difficulties are multiplied. In other words, the central government motto has been subtly changed from "we're all in this together" to a more severe message of "you can paddle your own canoe from now on." Mind you, Madam Mayor, what more can we expect from a government whose last all in it together captain took to the lifeboats, leaving his passengers in the lurch when his ship struck the rocks, abandoning us all to our fate under the guidance of Theresa May. Yes, Theresa May, who once called the Tories the nasty party, but who, on assuming power, decided they weren't quite nasty enough and is now leading the even nastier party. That may sound to some to be a bit critical, Madam Mayor, but how else can we describe a government which slashes the money available for supporting people, particularly the elderly, leading Warwickshire County Council to slash their contribution to sheltered housing in our borough from £781,000 a year to zero? How else can we describe a government, except nasty, which has allowed the present crisis in the national health to get to such a disastrous proportion? And how else can we describe a government whose Prime Minister holds hands with Donald Trump, apparently to support the billionaire president getting down a ramp, whilst at the same time cutting the grant available for supporting people where many older people really do need someone to support them getting down ramps or steps? In Nuneaton and Bedworth, Madam Mayor, central government grant has been slashed for the 6th year running, leaving us originally with the difficulty of bridging a gap of over £1.397 million for 2017-18, with a similar amount to be found next year. This relentless attack on local councils and the essential services they provide is the hallmark of this nasty party government. I'll return to my northern accent. It's quite difficult to do a southern one. Nevertheless, the priority of the Labour group has been and will continue to be the protection, as far as possible, of essential local services. We have, since 2010, despite grant being slashed year after year, been able to protect the vast majority of jobs at this authority and kept charges to some of the lowest in the country. The budget presented by the Cabinet this evening will give the Council the opportunity to endorse that policy again this year. Madam Mayor, budget planning is not done in 1 week or 1 month, but has gone on with frequent discussions between the management team and the Cabinet since February last year, when we set the budget for 2016-17. While presenting a budget for the coming financial year only this evening, I can tell the Council that discussions are well underway in preparation for 2018, when more disastrous cuts to grant are expected, indeed promised. Decisions made at Cabinet in the last 12 months have gradually reduced our expected deficit from almost £1.4 million to £429,000. And the figures I present this evening are designed to bridge that shortfall and remain within the law, as always. As can be seen, Madam Mayor, further restructuring of council departments will take place in the coming year, as in the current year, and lead to savings of around £80,000, which will unfortunately lead to some redundancies, but we have tried, as always, to keep these to a minimum and will ensure a continuation of levels of service to the public. Contributions to outside bodies will be reduced by £20,000. And although these are regrettable, the Council cannot continue to fund others at the same level while losing such a huge proportion of our own income year after year. Meanwhile, budgets for every department have been scrutinised line by line, and savings of several thousand in total are being put forward which will not affect our residents directly. By asking councillors to hold surgeries in Borough Council buildings wherever possible, we shall save a further £1,000, and the mayoralty will also contribute in reduced budgets being available for carrying out the function of first citizen. Some of the proposed savings have indeed, Madam Mayor, been enacted, and members will see that internal planting arrangements in the Town Hall have already been reduced, thereby saving around £4,000 a year. In a budget where every penny counts, though, it is essential that income is generated as well as costs cut. The recent and much maligned investment in our new depot at Gresham Road will save us £20,000 in the first year and more thereafter. This has also led to the idea of relocating the storage of market stalls to Harefield Road, leading to another £4,000 worth of savings. The success of our in-house company NABCEL, which other councils have now begun to copy, means that 2017-18 will see an unexpected increase in income of £40,000 to add to the profits already being made by NABCEL. This will bring the total profit to around £234,000 for the next financial year. What's more, we propose to expand its activities further in the coming year and seek to support to make up at least some of the money being lost from government grants. We aim to raise an additional income of £10,000 from the licensing of houses in multiple occupation, probably long overdue, and this will be expected to increase in 2018-19. Increases in other charges will be minimal, with a mere 3% being asked for, except on car parks, markets, building control and existing licensing fees. In these areas, charges will be frozen, meaning market rents have not risen in spite of inflation since the year 2013-14. Indeed, a single Bedworth market rent at £8.25 must now rank as possibly one of the cheapest in the UK. Cemetery charges will also rise by CPI plus 1% in line with a previous OSP recommendation. Madam Mayor, this council has always taken the advice of our Finance Director when it comes to the use of new homes bonus. Indeed, in all financial matters, we do prefer to rely on her advice and those of her staff and her qualifications and their qualifications, and I do have the list, as I said earlier, very impressive list of qualifications, rather than on the amateur experts who regularly regale us from the other side of a chamber about how they could do better. We have, in fact, set aside new homes bonus monies to assist with schemes such as planning for the future and similar one-off needs, rather than trying to balance the revenue account, as some of our neighbours have done. And look where they are now. Such wise advice from the Finance Director was well heeded, as this fund is now being gradually cut, and other Warwickshire councils are finding themselves in severe financial difficulties. Far be it from me to tell Tory-controlled Rugby how to manage their affairs, for example, but they are now proposing to charge their residents £40 a year for a green bin. And Tory Hinckley already asked residents to pay £24 a bin for a similar service. In contrast, with careful management of the budget and avoidance of rash decisions or use of the no homes bonus, Nuneaton and Bedworth is able to continue to provide a free 3-bin service to all our residents, not just those with the ability to pay more. As the innovators of Passport to Leisure, we can continue to offer free swimming to children, older residents and various other qualifying groups. No other authority in Warwickshire can match this, and I doubt many others in the country can either. Indeed, the general price levels at our leisure centres are still below other areas, and an adult swim, for example, is still the cheapest in Warwickshire, even if you are paying full price. I might add, Madam Mayor, that we have no intention of aping the government and increasing the age of PTL qualification to more than 60, as the government has quietly done with the National Bus Pass. Is it at 67 at the moment? Council tax, Madam Mayor, will remain at the lowest average level in Warwickshire, with this council asking for an increase of only 2.3%. We are the only district in the county to have no parish councils, so only the police, Warwickshire County Council and Borough Council precepts go towards the final bill in Nuneaton and Bedworth. This certainly keeps our bills down when compared to others nearby. You have only got to go to Chapel End, where Band D residents on our side of the road, the Labour-controlled side, are asked to pay far less, I think it's nearly £100, in total than residents on the Tory North Warwickshire side in the same street. For a Band D property, we shall ask for £220.29 a year for all the services we provide, or £4.23 a week. However, over 80% of our properties are in Bands A, B and C, so most people will pay less, with those living in Band A dwellings paying us less than £3 a week, and Band B residents paying just over the £3. Of course, bills, as always, go out in our name, despite the fact that less than 13% of the money comes to us to help finance our services. With Warwickshire County Council increasing their share of the tax by almost 4% if you include the 2% for social care, residents will see their bills rise by over 3% overall, despite the precept freeze by the Police Commissioner, whose reserves apparently total many millions, and from whom we shall expect a good police service in the coming year. Madam Mayor, I move the budget presented to Council by the Labour Cabinet. It is a budget which, despite our finances being more than decimated by central government, whose actions are supported by our 3 local Tory MPs, this budget provides for a level of service provision which continues to be unrivalled in the county at a continuing low cost to our residents. I move the budget for adoption, Madam Mayor.
Second that, Madam Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We meet tonight with a Labour Council that is failing to address the key critical issues that face residents, families, shoppers and businesses across our borough. Year after year, this council has shown that it is unwilling to act in the interest of those people who we are here to serve. Labour can only provide the same old answers to a different set of questions that face us as we move forward in the 21st century. The answers always seem to be to keep increasing taxes and fees and charges, irrespective of the damage that these actions cause to our economy. Labour spends money as if it is going out of fashion. Whilst the country has, thankfully, move beyond the 1970s mantra of tax and spend, we find that here in Nuneaton and Bedworth it is very much alive. Now, if I turn to some of the issues in the budget which we have before us from the controlling group, amalgamating Audit and Standards Committee, now it may be a welcome thing and should be done in the future, but as the Cabinet keep telling us as backbenchers or as opposition members, it isn't for Cabinet to determine what happens with the scrutiny functions of this council, and yet again it is the Cabinet which are determining the scrutiny. Audit is a scrutiny panel which scrutinises the functions of this council. Standards scrutinises the functions of the actions of the members of this council, and yet it is making a unilateral decision about how this council should function. It should go through the proper channels, through the Constitution, not through the mere whim of 6 people of this council. Now we look at changes in the management arrangements for Bulkington Pavilion and closure of the Marston Lane Pavilion, scrapping more services for residents and facilities. They're shoving 700 houses in Bulkington, yet reducing the services that they have in Bulkington. That really makes sense. Now we look at reduction in the costs of members' surgeries. Not every ward has council facilities there to hold a surgery. Are you asking my residents to come all the way into the town to hold a surgery here in the town hall? They haven't thought that through whatsoever. Perhaps they should have consulted with members before they did that. And talk about reducing the budgets for grants to voluntary organisations. They criticise us for taking money away from the very vulnerable and the most needy in society. They are taking away the very support from people that need that in society. Now, my declaration is already there on the record that I work for the court service. I see in my day job some of the most desperate and vulnerable people that come across our doors, and they need the help of people like the CAB and Warwickshire Advice Rights and others, and we are taking their funding away to help them. That is a disgrace from the chamber opposite, an absolute disgrace. Year on year they have taken funding from the voluntary organisations, and yet again they do it again. And then we look at other functions in here, such as an increase of 3% across fees and charges. I agree that car parks and markets should be excluded. Finally, they're listening to us over on this side, that if you keep increasing things, you cook the goose that lays the golden egg. But when it comes to licensing, and the officers have proven this, and it's in our shadow budget, we are actually making a £12,000 loss on licensing charges. We are supposed to be cost neutral. We have the facility to do that. So they want to subsidise licensing charges to the tune of £12,000 a year. And for the privilege, they want to then increase council tax by 2.3% and have a surplus of £28,000. That's rubbing salt into the wound. You are taking more money out of the pockets of the people in this borough than you need to, and that is disgraceful. So now I turn to moving the shadow budget. And before I move it, I would like to put on record my thanks to the officers in finance. And she won't like me for doing this, but I will single out Sarah because she has been a tremendous support throughout this process, and she will be missed, certainly from our side of the chamber too. And who would have known that putting a budget together could get us into such fun? Those of us who were present will acknowledge that. The foundations, moving on, of a vibrant and healthy and prosperous borough are the health of our town centres. A few months ago, I brought a friend and colleague into town for lunch. This friend used to live in Nuneaton but hadn't visited for a while. And as soon as we walked over from the Justice Centre on a Wednesday market day, she commented on how the town had deteriorated. She was genuinely sorry and appalled at the decline we have seen under Labour. This is a message I hear constantly from friends and family, and on the streets when I and my colleagues go out and speak to voters about their concerns. At the top of many voters' list of concerns is the state of our town centres. And what happens when we dare to challenge the Labour orthodoxy that everything is okay in Nuneaton and Bedworth? What happens when we dare to dream that we can have something better for our borough? We get told to move out of the borough. Now, Councillor Longden isn't in his place, but he said, if you like Hinckley so much, why don't you move there, is the reply we get from Councillor Longden. And there we have it, the Labour's policy in a nutshell. Agree with the Labour line that everything is hunky-dory, or like the sheriff from a bad old Western movie, get out of town. Well, I'm here to say tonight, no more. I was born in this town. I'm proud of this borough. I'm here to fight for this borough. And I'm here to hold you accountable for your lack of vision and ambition. I'm here to challenge you to do something better for our borough. And I'm here to provide an alternative to the failed policies of this Labour Council. And so are the rest of the Conservative Party. They are behind me 100% to do the best by the people of this borough. And I can promise you this. We will challenge you every step of the way, and we are here to stay. We won't move. We do have a vision for our borough, and that is why tonight we are presenting our alternative budget to show that things can be done differently. There is another offer on the table to the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth, and we are here to show that they can dare to dream for a better future for our borough. We are on their side. That is tonight why we are presenting a budget for families, a budget for residents, a budget for shoppers, and a budget for businesses. We desperately need to offer a package of measures that will bring in more shoppers, market traders, and businesses to our town centres. We need to make ourselves as competitive as possible to give people a reason to visit Nuneaton and Bedworth town centres. Therefore, we will introduce an unbeatable offer of parking in our towns during the weekday of 3 hours for just £1. The longer people stay in our towns, the more money they spend with our businesses, and it gives more reasons for businesses to stay or new ventures to be opened. We have seen this year the extraordinary damage that has been caused by Labour's tax and spend policy when it comes to charging visitors to park in our borough. Labour cooked the goose that laid the golden egg. We have seen a £250,000 black hole in the car parking budget, and over 70,000 tickets less sold compared to last year, and those are the latest figures available. I suspect the ticket deficit will be higher. The gap over Christmas this year compared to last year was over 20,000 tickets alone. And talking about Christmas, as in previous years' shadow budgets, we will go one step further than Labour are prepared to go. It is not enough to offer free parking on the Sundays running up to Christmas. Those are limited shopping days. If you are serious about supporting shoppers and businesses in the run-up to Christmas, you need to do it on the Saturdays instead. That will provide a massive boost to our trading over Christmas. We are rightly proud of our formerly award-winning markets, but it is clear for all to see that the number of market stalls is declining. And why should we be surprised? Our market stall fees are amongst the highest in the country, and we are literally higher than some London boroughs, and we are literally paying the price for Labour's folly. We are putting out between 25 and 35 less stalls per week this year compared to last year. Don't believe me, look at the figures that went to ONS. And we are £30,000 under on the forecast budget. What is becoming increasingly obvious is that this council simply does not know how to run town centres. 1 year they're sacking the town centre manager, and 18 months later they hire a new one, under a different guise, to probably get around employment law. The Conservative group has a long-standing policy of supporting business improvement districts for both Nuneaton and Bedworth. We stood on a manifesto promising to provide bids, and we will continue to do so. Whilst this council cannot prove itself able to run town centres, we on these benches are pleased that the businesses in Nuneaton have indicated that they wish to pursue a bid, and they will have our wholehearted support going forward. And so will Bedworth, should the businesses there opt to push forward with a bid. The sooner we put people in charge who know how to run a town centre, the better. And our package of measures in the shadow budget will work with businesses to deliver for shoppers and businesses in Nuneaton and Bedworth. Families are vitally important to the well-being of our borough. Instead of supporting our much-loved, much-used and now sadly much-missed Play Rangers scheme, they opted to scrap it in favour of a climbing tower. Well-intentioned but ill-conceived, it has proved to be a white elephant. We heard it's only raised £2,000 tonight, out of a budget of £90,000. Labour have squandered any goodwill towards it by its series of blunders. Labour didn't realise you needed special vehicle licences and special vehicles to make this work. You also need special training. All of this they failed to build into their business model, and the residents are the ones that suffered. Yet another example of Labour incompetence. Not only did the Play Rangers reach more people, they were about for more of the year too. That is why we will cut this council's losses in the region of £90,000 a year and scrap the climbing tower, and we will plough the savings back into providing a first-class Play Rangers service. So, in the shadow budget, we are clearly setting out a package of measures to support the building blocks of the well-being of our borough. It is the Conservative budget that will support residents, our budget that will support shoppers, our budget that will support businesses, and our budget that will support families. And finally, I want to tackle one last myth head-on. The revenue support grant has been reduced by this government. But what Labour conveniently forget to mention is that we also have the business rates retention scheme. And I draw your attention to the back page of your recommendations. Conveniently forgot to mention this, didn't you, Councillor Harvey? At the bottom, net retained business rates, £2.9 million last year. 4.4 million this year. You complain about 1.4 million being taken off you and forget to mention to the residents there's 1.4 million pounds coming back. That's what I call misleading people, Madam Mayor, and it's not fair and it isn't right and it's not open and transparent. In time, the business rates retention scheme will replace the handouts from central government and force us to stand on our own 2 feet. I think that's what Labour are actually frightened of, and bring in investment and businesses to our borough. If we expand the businesses in our borough, we increase the pool of money that is available to fund our services. We should become self-sufficient. This government wants to see us take control and become masters of our own destiny. We have it within our power to make Nuneaton and Bedworth the powerhouse of Warwickshire if we put in place the right policies. We are, after all, the largest town in Warwickshire. We need to dream big for the future. The set of budget proposals we have set out tonight go a long way towards dreaming big for our towns, to becoming the powerhouse of Warwickshire and becoming masters of our own destiny. However, I and many others fear that under the present stewardship of this council, Labour will become the master of our own destruction instead, and I commend our budget proposals to this council.
Seconded, and I reserve my right to speak, Madam Mayor.
Think about the amendment now. To continue this, but for the the lay people here, it is extremely complicated. I can speak right at the end of the. When do we have the vote on the amendment?
So you're allowed to speak before the vote on the amendments. Okay. So obviously, so it's open for the debate on the amendments. Any member? Councillor Condicore.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Obviously, the more budgets you get, the longer this process goes on. And there's things of merit in both the Labour and the Tory budgets as it is. And there are obviously things we violently disagree in both budgets. And as I said earlier, the process at the County Council is far better, where people see the budgets weeks ahead, so we actually get a proper idea, a proper way to be able to ask officers questions, and even ask the Tories and the Labour group questions about their budgets. Because quite often, on a single line here, we don't always get what you're doing or what's the implications. In terms of particular things, yeah, I'm quite keen on slimming the management down, but getting rid of that many posts, that sounds a bit severe. You haven't talked about that in your speech. Competitive tendering of the refuse service. Well, actually, no. What I want is a refuse service the same for the whole of Warwickshire. And I'd far rather keep our staff and actually merge the management of the 5 councils in Warwickshire and have a combined waste authority. Because then we can really save some money on capital, on refuse trucks and things, and we can give the whole of Warwickshire the same recycling service. Obviously, I'm quite keen on the climbing wall fiasco being put to bed, but I'm not sure about selling it. Maybe we should ask if some scout group or someone could actually take on and use it, because it was actually bought with Section 106 money, I believe. And yeah, it should have a future. The problem is the council is not very good at managing things like climbing walls. In fact, it's absolutely appalling at managing things like climbing walls, and that's why the third sector may actually do a lot better job of that. I've made lots of notes, and one of the areas we keep talking about is car parking. We take in, or should take in, about £2 million a year on car parking. It's been an absolute disaster raising it so abruptly for the 2-hour rate, because you're encouraging people to either stay only about 45 minutes, look at their watch and race back. Yeah, it really is counterproductive. But I don't actually agree with so much of a discount. Yeah, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds here in the Tory proposals. So I think somewhere halfway between, actually offering a really good rate for 2 hours. That's what lots of places do, and 2 hours parking for £1 is an awful lot better than an hour for £1. And I think actually that makes the change more affordable. And I've always said we should be looking at different charging at the Rope Walk, to the Co-op car park, to Paul Bank Street, because we do not use smart pricing. Someone like Ryanair, other towns, Stratford-upon-Avon, there are places in Stratford you can park free. There are other places that are really expensive. It's called managing demand, and it means you get the money that is available from customers with lots of money, just want to roll up to the Rope Walk, those sort of customers. But you also provide parking in the Harefield roads, maybe for the more cost-conscious customers or people who want to stay longer. It's providing different price points. And having the exact same parking charge for 1 hour, 2 hours and 3 hours at every single car park is madness. So I agree that we need to look at the 1, 2 and 3 hour parking, but I think the amount of subsidy we'd effectively be giving by the Tory proposals is too much. I could go through all these proposals, but I really wish we do this better and actually bring out all these proposals a week before, have people ask questions about them, and maybe come to a compromise. Thank you.
There's no other speaker. It's back to yourself, Councillor Tremans. Oh, no, we get to
Thank you very
much.
Do you?
No. Yeah.
I think we've heard some interesting stuff tonight. Donald Trump, Theresa May, Ryanair, Nuneaton and Bedworth. Try and focus, try and concentrate. That's what it's about. I mean, I know that's a lot to ask, and we've already heard tonight about not being in touch and not living in the real world. Well, I think if Labour members opposite were a little bit more focused on the practicalities or of getting things done, making things an economic success, or holding their hands up and being big enough to say, you know, this is beyond them and that they need to get experts in and take their advice, they would do a lot better than a lot of, as far as I can see, political dogma. You know, we've heard so many misleading things tonight about, the heartless governments cut our grant. Yes, reduced on one hand, but then massively increased with business rates. So to take Councillor Harvey's analogy about the canoe, yes, governments do want people to paddle their own canoe, make their own future. You want to just lie back and drift and have it all done. Good councils will go out there, get more businesses in, get a lot more revenue in, and use that to fund public services. Everybody wins. That's a vibrant, strong economy. But it doesn't seem to suit you guys, does it? Been here too long. Living in the past. You know, 20th century ideas for the 21st century. That's what we've heard tonight. I mean, you know, the whole thing of being out of touch and not understanding is typified by the financial mismanagement of, against everybody's advice and our imploring and the public outcry, you shoved up car parking prices and have already lost $250,000 through it. Probably a lot more by now, and will lose a load more in the future. You can't keep on squandering all this money, getting it wrong by $250,000 in a few months here, £1 million on the depot there. It's all financial incompetence. You passed your sell-by date. Forgive me, but, you know, when the leader doesn't know after 40-odd budget-setting meetings what the protocol is, and having been leader for 30-odd of those, then no wonder it's a backward-looking budget that just blames everyone else as usual. Why don't you just, some of you, have some conscience and vote for a budget that will actually do some good, that will revitalise the town centre, that will get more shoppers in, more revenue, fill up some of the empty shop units? Get more business rate in there, then you don't need to keep shoving the council tax up. We've got a minor increase in ours, you've got well over 2%. It's just, again, it's telling the public everything they need to know. You want government to keep giving you handouts and keep having the public write you cheques because you just financially mismanage it. You lose $250,000 here, $1 million there. It's all waste. That's a huge amount to get back from the public. If you don't support this budget, as I strongly expect that you won't, then you are just reinforcing the message to everybody that you're just stuck in your own little world where all you think about is Donald Trump or whatever, and not Nuneaton and Bedworth and how to improve things for people.
Councillor Harvey.
Well, Madam Mayor, there was a time in the Chamber where meetings were conducted in a more civilised fashion and people didn't resort to personal abuse and shouting to get across a point. I've heard nothing but personal abuse for the last few minutes about, financial mismanagement. This group takes the advice of the finance director. We have never gone against the advice of the finance director. However, Madam Mayor, in the Conservative alternative budget, we have got the lowest cost of a management team in the county. We have a managing director, the lowest paid in the county, who only works 4 days a week. He's only paid for 4 days a week, and I suggest he probably has to top up as well. We have one other person on the management team who also is employed for 4 days a week, and we have a third one who is looking to be employed in a similar situation. So we have 6 in total. Even that has meant that some people are stretched in their responsibilities from collecting the bins to running the civic hall. But yet we can get rid of more of these people and expect them all to work more and more and more for the same money. I actually received emails very late on Saturday evening from one of our directors. They're not paid any more for doing that. And it's actually a bit beyond what's needed, Madam Mayor. We shouldn't be asking people to do that. But yes, let's save $253,000 on that. Dead easy. Stop publishing In Touch. So we'll not let the residents know anything about what the council is doing unless they just happen to be tuned in on the internet. Increase fees and charges by 3.6%, higher than we're suggesting. Cease the breakaway club. Well, the last time they were in power for a very limited period, they got rid of the play scheme. They lasted 2 years in power here. They got rid of the play scheme and closed public toilets in our parks. But they believe the public but wanted that. They soon showed them in 2010 they didn't. But they're going to get rid of the alternative play scheme now. Remove the arts development budget. Well, how does that not surprise me that the Conservative Party is not in favour of the arts? We're very proud of what we've done with the arts over 40 years in this borough, Madam Mayor, and we should continue with it. Work with community groups to hand over the running of the community centres. That is fine, Madam Mayor, if that's what they want to do. But what this means is just stop all support now. Then we've got things like give every councillor £5,000. We once tried this many years ago when we were a bit more flush with money, and we gave each one, I think, £2,000. Several of them, in particularly the Conservative held wards, gave it to the local schools, which were meant to be funded by the county council. So not only have they got the county council money, they've got our money as well, because they couldn't think of other things to do. That idea is complete madness, Madam Mayor, when we're in a situation of financial difficulties. Then we've got £10,000 to provide real Christmas trees for each town. What do you think the ones were made of at Christmas? One of them, well, it's actually two trees growing together, I think, at Bedworth, in front of Bedworth Church. Is it 3? And we've made it into a Christmas tree. and we've lit that, Madam Mayor. Very much appreciated, and we've done the same in Nuneaton. We do hope, however, that businesses will sponsor them in the coming year. We haven't said we won't provide them, but we've hoped that businesses will do their part. Go to Stratford. It isn't the District Council that provides all their wonderful lights. It's meant to be a partnership from both sides. Some of the things that have been said across there, I just think absolutely staggering, absolutely staggering. We are here to stay, we're not moving, said Councillor Wilson. Well, I think with this budget, Councillor Wilson, you're exactly right. You are across there to stay and you are not moving.
I am going to move to the vote, and by law we're required to have a recorded vote on the amendments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a recorded vote on the amendment. Councillor Aldington. Councillor Aldington against. Councillor Beaumont. Councillor Beaumont against. Councillor Bennett. Councillor Bennett against. Councillor Bonner. Councillor Bonner abstained. Councillor Brindley. Councillor Brindley for. Councillor Copland. Councillor Copland against. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Daffin against. Councillor Doherty apologies. Councillor Doughty has left. Councillor Elliott. Sorry, Councillor Elliott's left. Councillor Gizane. Councillor Gizane for. Councillor Glass. Councillor Glass against. Councillor Golby. Councillor Golby for. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gran for. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Gutteridge for. Councillor Hancox. Councillor Hancox against. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey against. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Haynes against. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson against. Councillor Kondaka. Abstain. Councillor Kondaka abstain. Councillor Tony Lloyd. Against. Councillor Tony Lloyd against. Councillor Ian Lloyd. Councillor Ian Lloyd against. Councillor Longden. Councillor Longden against. Councillor Margrave apologies. Councillor Caroline Phillips. Councillor Caroline Phillips against. Councillor Neil Phillips. Councillor Neil Phillips against. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret against. Councillor Margaret Pomfret. Councillor Margaret Pomfret against. Councillor Jill Shepherd. Councillor Jill Shepherd against. Councillor Tracy Shepherd. Councillor Tracy Shepherd against. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tandy against. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Tromans for. Councillor Watkins. Councillor Watkins against. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson for. The amendment is lost.
So the amendment is lost, so we're now speaking to the substantive motion. Any councillor?
Have a go as no one else is. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Quite a few things stand out as being good ideas in the Labour budget. I don't actually mind merging the Audit and Standards Committee. The Standards Committee spend all its time taking me before them to tell me off about things. So actually having more meetings will actually speed the process up so that it won't take 2 years to tell me off for my misbehaviour, particularly when it could have been sorted out in 24 hours. Lots of things are good on here, but lots of things are bad. And we're still failing to do anything about the car parking charges. We're still failing to support the town centres and get economic growth. The key thing is, and why places like thinking of how to deal with cuts, they're actually growing their population, growing their businesses, and actually looking forward to actually having some prosperity. In this town, we are losing around 500 people of working age every year. The population is only growing because we're getting older people living longer. We're not investing in our future. On a few other matters, I mean, you talk about the deputy mayor's car. It's actually the chauffeur for the mayor that's actually a very large cost. I wouldn't say we don't have a chauffeur for the mayor, but every time the mayor goes to any little function, we have an expensive chauffeur driving around and then sitting there for 2 hours, 3 hours, drinking tea. It's very, very expensive. Town twinning. I understand we went to Lyon and then on to Rouen for our town twinning. And that was charged to the county council's £3,000 town twinning budget. I don't know why we've still got a town twinning budget. Civic Hall is an interesting one. I actually think things are improving with the actual shows at the Civic Hall. They seem to get a lot more internet savvy. I've been very critical of the internet savviness of the Civic Hall. That seems to be getting better, but the bistros and the bars need shaking up, which is why I agree with the Tories' idea of actually looking at franchising those out, because they're a business, they're an entrepreneurial thing to run a restaurant and a bar and a bistro, and actually getting someone in who actually wants to have customers served and actually try and get some footfall is really good. I mentioned the Waste Authority earlier. It's really vital we actually do something about waste. We have 5 district councils, each running their own waste trucks, and then we have a county council. We have cost shunting between the 2 councils. We really must save real money by having a Warwickshire waste partnership firm, whatever you call it, to actually keep the workers doing the jobs, but actually save on a lot of the infrastructure, like spare trucks and having a common system to buy bins, etc. I say there is a lot of good stuff in this budget as well, but you really need to get your competence better. We talked about Donald Trump earlier. There was a theory that he couldn't read because he wanted things as diagrams and maps about the internet today. I always wonder if Dennis Harvey can actually do numbers and maths and things, because he has a go at me for being an armchair expert. I remember in 2008 going to the Cabinet and saying about the increasing debt and putting money into Icelandic banks. Are you sure you want to do this? I was actually there warning about the repercussions of the debt bubble that was going on. So I think I'm an armchair expert, but I get it right quite often. We actually need not to implicitly trust officers. They're professionals. We should treat them as professionals, but we should also question. We should also say that project plan, that cost, have you built contingency in? It's not bad to actually check and actually ask questions of officers, rather than think, I'm not very good at maths, I'll just leave all the finance to the finance people and all the project planning to the project planning people. It is being part of a councillor to actually ask questions. They are the experts, but they're the experts working for the public via the councillors. And we're derelicting the councillor's function in actually not holding people to account and not running things properly. We talk about having the cheapest management around. I have a lot of dealings with Hinckley. The management there is absolutely superb. The new chief executive, he knows what's going on, whatever. I'm sure he's paid more than our chief executive. I suspect he's probably worked 6 days a week. It's not just how much we pay our managers, and this is why I don't want to get rid of all our managers. I think that's a retrograde step as well. But it's actually having the drive there and having good management so you get value for money. It's not just what you pay people, it's actually what they generate in terms of business rates and income. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there, but have a nice budget vote.
Councillor Girlby.
Just seeking clarification on a couple of points on this. When you put the savings within the ITC budget, what does that actually refer to? What costs are being cut? What savings? Where are you going to get the money from for that? The reduction in the budget for the town hall floral decorations of £4,000. Well, you complain so much about not having any money. Why are we even paying out £4,000 on floral decorations in the first place for it to be in this budget?
You're speaking to the item. They can't answer questions on it. So.
Well, that's okay. I'm just reduction in the budget for mayoral hospitality and the running costs for the deputy mayor's car, £1,200 in total. That's on a budget of £86,200 from the budget book. The reduction in the budget for grants for voluntary organisations, £10,000. That's very socialist of you. When you're saving 28 grand, I'm sure you could stretch for 10 out of that to go back into the voluntary organisations. Rationalising management costs is not a problem, I don't think. Out there in the real world, you are on call quite a lot. I get phone calls at 3 a.m. Single rent is great. The lowest rent, that's fine. If you've got people to actually pay the rent, if you've got no take up on it, it's a moot point. I don't understand how you can sit and chuckle and laugh about things, and I mean, £4,000 on flowers. Why is it there? Why is it there in the first place? I know you can't answer, but I'm just kind of highlighting a few things. But I would be more interested in finding out what the ITC cuts are, If somebody would like to furnish me with that information via email, which I'm sure would be the answer if you could answer me. Thanks.
Councillor Grant, only just.
Rhetorical questions put out there. With regard to restructuring the Democratic Services section, what exactly does this mean and entail in practice? And how does it affect the Democratic Services Department? And in reduction of the cost of members' surgeries, a lot of people like that some of the councillors hold surgeries in places. They know where the surgeries are, they know when they are, they know where they can go to meet their counsellor if they need to. It's £1,000. How much is actually spent each year on members' surgeries? I mean, for £1,000 and for that sort of service that people do like where councillors hold surgeries and people attend them, if you promote them well enough, you get a lot of attendance. And the reduction for the budget for mayor hospitality and the reduced running cost for the deputy mayor's car, overall £1,200, what was this money being spent on in the first place? And why was it even needed in the first place if it's decided that it's not needed now? And with regards to restructuring the land and property theme as well, what does this actually mean in practice and how will reducing £6,000 actually affect this service? I think these are questions that a lot of residents of the borough would like answering. So like Claire, I would appreciate it if relevant people can get back to me by email on this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Quite interestingly. So I've just got a small comment to make. We talked a lot about how things are managed and efficiency. I also was a bit surprised that we're reducing the floral by £4,000. But if you've got plant life in your office workers will work better. There's lots of ways of making your staff more efficient and better. So I think every desk in the county should have a plant on it. Thank you.
Gutteridge.
I worked for a company and the man went shooting. We had pictures, we had stuffed animals on the wall with plants. It was a bit grotesque at times. Right, back to business. Changes in the management arrangements for Bulkington Pavilion and the closure of the Marston Lane Pavilion. They're all going to change in the cars now. That'll be interesting. By crumbs it will. So no showers. That'll be interesting for the lads. And then also, and the ladies, because at Bulkington there's netball, cricket, football. So it should be quite interesting. Where is it now? Reduction in the budget for grants to voluntary organisation. That's hitting some of the hardest people. Grants to the little communities. Very sad about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. I think it is imperative that members actually take some of the burden in terms of the austerity and the cuts in our budgets. So I don't think it's unreasonable for most members to find a council building to hold surgeries in, and I'm sure Councillor Graham will be able to alert his residents if he does that. Reductions in the mayoral budget again, Madam Mayor, I think are sensible. And indeed, throughout here you will hear about reductions to elected members. So we've looked first at ourselves and then at minimising the impact to residents. I think this is the best in light of the very serious situation facing us, and I, for one, will be voting for this budget. Madam Mayor, thank you.
Although it's not questions, we need to have a little training thing, I think, about what section of the meeting is questions and what section of the meeting is debate and points put forward. But first of all, I don't need any lectures on being a socialist from somebody who apparently couldn't decide which party to join over a period of 12 months. That manners maketh man, and I take man to include the human race, and I've always tried to live by that motto. In fact, I write it on the board often at school for school children when I'm teaching maths. Again, I don't need any personal insults on the question of maths, Madam Mayor. First of all, the plants that we're talking about were not largely flowering plants. There were some. It's the planting on the stairs. Now, personally, I think it actually looks worse without them. But we have had events here where we've had flowers put in. In fact, when we had the West Midlands CA here, I paid for them. We have gone through the accounts in great detail, looking at things where we can perhaps cut back for ourselves, like surgeries. The cost of a surgery is not that great individually. So yesterday, Councillor Lloyd and County Councillor Davis and I decided we, between the three of us, would pay the surgery cost of the building we use, which happens to be a county council building, which we don't get free, rather than move it. It's not a great deal of money to us, but it's part of this saving. In terms of restructuring democratic services, I would remind people, Madam Mayor, that Pam Matthews, the fantastic Democratic Services Liaison Officer, Members Liaison Officer, we have had for so many years, has taken her retirement. And so that department is obviously being restructured in that sense, Madam Mayor. We're looking for opportunities wherever they can be found. But to expect people who are already doing 3 top management jobs for the salary of one of them, 3, to be doing yet another one is ludicrous. You cannot say to somebody, well, you are right at the top of the tree, therefore you can work every single hour, 24 hours a day. That is just totally unreasonable, Madam Mayor. We don't pay our officers excessively. We like to think that we pay people a reasonable salary for what they're doing in a borough which is not exactly wealthy. And we're glad we're not in the realms of some authorities. But don't start going down here saying, what is this, what is this, what is the other? Find out what things are. You know, the budget is not that complicated to follow for most of us. And you can actually look at the services and say, well, yes, that can be, we can make some saving there and so on. But we have gone to the nth degree in this authority to save money. We've even got to the point of not providing biscuits at meetings. Yeah, there are biscuits outside, Madam Mayor. I paid for them. And if there's a meeting with other officers, the Chief Executive pays for them. But the Council doesn't pay for them and hasn't done for some considerable time. We have looked at every single small item throughout the Council's budget without hitting services to the public. Madam Mayor, this is a reasonable budget that we're putting forward. It's a budget which preserves the best level of services in Warwickshire. The maths are correct, and it deserves support, but I'm sure it will only get the support of not 6 people, as was said earlier, but of the whole Labour group.
I shall now move to the vote, and by law we're required to have a recorded vote. Alan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to remind members, this is a vote on the substantive motion. Councillor Aldington. Councillor Aldington 4. Councillor Beaumont. Councillor Beaumont 4. Councillor Bennett. Councillor Bennett 4. Councillor Bonner. Councillor Bonner abstained. Councillor Brindley. Councillor Brindley against. Councillor Copland. Councillor Copland 4. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Daffin 4. Councillor Doherty, apologies. Councillor Doughty has left. Councillor Elliott has left. Councillor Gizane. Councillor Gizane against. Councillor Glass. 4. Councillor Glass 4. Councillor Golby. Councillor Golby against. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gran against. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Gutteridge against. Councillor Hancocks. Councillor Hancocks 4. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey 4. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Haynes 4. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson 4. Councillor Kondaka. Councillor Kondaka against. Councillor Tony Lloyd. Councillor Tony Lloyd 4. Councillor Ian Lloyd. Councillor Ian Lloyd 4. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Longdon 4. Councillor Margrave apologies. Councillor Caroline Phillips. Councillor Caroline Phillips 4. Councillor Neil Phillips. Councillor Neil Phillips 4. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret 4. Councillor Margaret Pomfret. Councillor Margaret Pomfret 4. Councillor Jill Shepherd. Councillor Jill Shepherd 4. Councillor Tracy Shepherd. Councillor Tracy Shepherd 4. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tandy 4. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Tromans against. Councillor Watkins. Councillor Watkins 4. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson against. Motion is carried.
That's the motion carried, and now move on to D. The Treasury Strategy and Budget Framework. Councillor Harvey, could I invite you to move the recommendations from Cabinet and the addendums?
Move that, Madam Mayor.
Is there a seconder?
Second that and reserve my right if necessary.
Any member wish to speak? No? By law, I'm required to have a recorded vote. Alan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the substantive motion. Councillor Aldington. Councillor Aldington 4. Councillor Beaumont. Councillor Beaumont 4. Councillor Bennett. Councillor Bennett 4. Councillor Bonner. Councillor Bonner not here. Councillor Brindley. Councillor Brindley abstain. Councillor Copland. Councillor Copland 4. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Daffin 4. Councillor Doherty apologies. Councillor Doughty has left. Councillor Elliott has left. Councillor Gazane. Councillor Gazane abstain. Councillor Glass. Councillor Glass 4. Councillor Golby. Councillor Golby abstain. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gran abstain. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Gutteridge abstain. Councillor Hancox. Councillor Hancox 4. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey 4. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Haynes 4. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson 4. Councillor Kondaka. Councillor Kondaka against. Councillor Tony Lloyd. Councillor Tony Lloyd 4. Councillor Ian Lloyd. Councillor Ian Lloyd 4. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Longdon 4. Councillor Margrave apologies. Councillor Caroline Phillips. Councillor Caroline Phillips 4. Councillor Neil Phillips. Councillor Neil Phillips 4. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret 4. Councillor Margaret Pomfret. Councillor Margaret Pomfret 4. Councillor Jill Shepherd. Councillor Jill Shepherd 4. Councillor Tracy Shepherd. Councillor Tracy Shepherd 4. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tandy 4. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Tromans abstain. Councillor Watkins. Councillor Watkins 4. Councillor Wilson. And Councillor Wilson abstain. The motion is carried, Chair.
So the motion is carried. I move on to E. Councillor Harvey, do you wish to move the motion set out on pages 69 and 70 of the agenda as amended by the addendum to take account of the council budget requirements?
I'm hoping it will be unanimously supported. It is to add together the three precepts from the three different authorities. It isn't to decide our precept, that's just being done. It's to add them together.
Wishes to speak on this item? No? Obviously, by law, we're required to another recorded vote. Alan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a substantive motion. Councillor Aldington. Councillor Aldington 4. Councillor Beaumont. Councillor Beaumont 4. Councillor Bennett. Councillor Bennett 4. Councillor Bonner. Councillor Bonner 4. Councillor Brindley. Councillor Brindley against. Councillor Copland. Councillor Copland 4. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Daffin 4. Councillor Doherty apologies. Councillor Doughty has left. Councillor Elliott has left. Councillor Gazane. Councillor Glass. Councillor Glass 4. Councillor Golby. Councillor Golby against. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gran against. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Gutteridge against. Councillor Hancox. Councillor Hancox 4. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey 4. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Haynes 4. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson 4. Councillor Kondaka. Councillor Kondaka 4. Councillor Tony Lloyd. Councillor Tony Lloyd 4. Councillor Ian Lloyd. Councillor Ian Lloyd 4. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Longdon 4. Councillor Margrave apologies. Councillor Caroline Phillips. Councillor Caroline Phillips 4. Councillor Neil Phillips. Councillor Neil Phillips 4. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret. Councillor Gwyn Pomfret 4. Councillor Margaret Pomfret. Councillor Margaret Pomfret 4. Councillor Jill Shepherd. Councillor Jill Shepherd 4. Councillor Tracy Shepherd. Councillor Tracy Shepherd 4. Councillor June Tandy. Councillor June Tandy 4. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Tromans against. Councillor Watkins. Councillor Watkins 4. Councillor Wilson. And Councillor Wilson against. The motion is carried, Chair.
Motion's carried. So this is the end of the proceedings. Can I thank councillors and ladies and gentlemen? That concludes the business of this council. I now propose to close this meeting and retire. And I would remind members that there's an extraordinary meeting of the council, which is to begin after a short break, and I suggest we reconvene at 8:55.